Mary Ann's going old school back in my youth ministry days. Shine, Jesus, shine. I was wanting to shine my light during that one. I like that. Earlier today, before we came in for worship, Benny Setliff and I were talking. Benny said something I think was very powerful. He said the most powerful word in the English language, most powerful word you can think of is hope. Hope. Man, that rings true, doesn't it? We need hope. But hope has a name, doesn't it? And his name is Jesus. He is the hope that I have, and I hope it's the hope that you hold fast to. He is our teacher. And what he teaches us is not because he wants us to be smart people, intellectual Christians. No, he wants us to have abundant life. Jesus is not teaching us things that he wants to do just to keep us down, to hold us back, to make us to be a bunch of prudes. No, he teaches us to bring us out, to bring us forth. He says, you're the light of the world. Let your light shine brightly. You're the salt of the earth. You are to go out and penetrate the world around you and to make a difference. And so his teaching is something that we need to take into consideration every day of our life. And we kind of come up with this little series, Jesus Arithmetic, math, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. And we want to just kind of let that penetrate into your mind, just to think about this addition, subtraction, the things that Jesus tells us to do, the things that we need to take away from our life, the things we need to add to our life. And I'll be very honest with you, the way that the kingdom works and the math that the kingdom uses doesn't make sense logically a lot of times. But Jesus will teach us as we study his word that the more we give away, the more we get back. The more we have. The more we try to hold on to and amass and keep, the less we will have. It doesn't make sense in the world. But in the spiritual realm, it makes perfect sense. Because he is able to do things that just confound the wise. It doesn't make sense when we read it. How am I supposed to love those who persecute me? To forgive those who have harmed me. The world says I need to get even with them. I need to set the score right. I need to settle things. But Jesus says, no. Let me handle that for you. Let me take care of that. God says, vengeance is mine. So don't take it into your own hands. Today, we're going to sit at the desk at the feet of the Master. And we're going to listen to him tell us something that we need to add to our life. And again, as I have already said, the math doesn't make sense because what Jesus is going to teach us, if we add something of his, it'll subtract a lot of things that will harm us. So if you would you take your Bibles and turn to the Gospel of Matthew. Turn to that 11th chapter. And at the very end of that chapter, verse 28 through 30, we will hear the instructions of the Master. Matthew 11, starting in verse 28, Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." In the context of what Jesus was speaking that Matthew records for us, he was talking to a people who had been burdened down by religious rules. You see, in Jesus' day, the priest and rabbi, the high priest, all of those who were the religious leaders of that day had taken the 10 Commandments of God and they had simplified them for the people. God had given them 10 Commandments, The religious leaders of Jesus' day had simplified them into 613 rules that they needed to follow. And so, you sound like what? Our government, okay. We're not going there today. But seriously, the context of that is the squeezing of obeying a bunch of rituals and rules and man-made interpretation that the people who truly wanted to please God and to serve Him were strangled to death. And so the context of that is that very application, but I think it has application beyond that. For you see, that would not really apply to us here today. That strangling of keeping a bunch of rules and regulations. To be very honest with you, it's difficult for Dan and I to get you here one day a week. I mean, seriously, don't feel like you're being strangled by what involvement that your walk with the Lord is doing for you. So we do need to understand that context, but there is something that's going on in your life that this will apply to. And I want to take His instructions, because truly He tells us if we will follow Him, if we will believe in Him to the point where it'll affect our life, He says, I will give you rest. And I think that is something that we do need, don't we? All of us today, in the world that we live in the time, the age that we live in, we should be the most rested people of all. I mean, you think about it, seriously. Think about 50 years ago, 75 years ago, 100 years ago. It wasn't a lot of jobs that you had to go to where you could make a lot of wage. You had to grow a lot of your own food. You had to do a lot of your own work. You couldn't just pick up the phone and call someone to come over and fix something. No, you got out your tools and you fixed it. You didn't just come home and flip a TV on and kick back and just drink a soda. No, when you did get off of work, you came home and you fed the cows and you took care of the livestock. You did things. You worked until it was dark. Then you got up at 4 a.m. and started your day all over again. We don't have that today. But I'm here to tell you, I don't think that we're any more rested than our ancestors were. You see, we're busy, aren't we? When we come to you as leaders within the church and say, hey, we've got an opportunity for you to serve in the ministry. We see something in your life that just shines, and we want you to impart that into someone else's life. Most of the time, what we hear is, what? We're too busy. I am so busy. And I believe it. I don't argue that point. So I think that this teaching of Jesus is for us today, because we need rest, don't we? Jesus gives rest to those who are stressed. And I want us to leave this place today with His teaching on our mind and the application of that applied to our life. So let's look at this as we go through and see what he says to us. He starts off by saying, "Come to me." That's the invitation that all of us, everyone in this room, needs to apply to our life. We've got to come to Jesus. Come to Him, He says. Jesus doesn't say, stay back, you don't deserve me. He doesn't say, you are such a low-down, dirty sinner. All the things that you've done, I've seen them all, and you don't deserve to come near me. No, what does He say? He says, when you're bogged down with sin, when you're bogged down with stress, when the worries of this life is too much, come to me. Come to me. You notice, He didn't say, come to a program, did He? He didn't come to the people and said, hey, I know you're really stressed out. You're really taxed. You're really burdened down. There's a great program that you can do. It's a 40-day program. You do that and it's going to be great. No, he didn't say that. He says, come to me. That, friends, is the beginning of having relief from the burdens of life. Have you come to him? Have you personally came to him? Not know about him. Boy, there's a very large divide between knowing about Jesus and coming to him. There's a great deal of difference between, a lot of us have head knowledge. We know who Jesus is. We've read the Bible. We've seen him work in people's lives, but have we actually followed him? Jesus says, come. And friends, the God of all creation wants to be with you. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that magnificent? Even though he knows who you are. I might not know who you are. You probably don't know who I am. Jesus knows both of us, and he loves us anyway. And he says, come to me. Friends, you've got to step out. This invitation is for him. The rest that he gives us is not found simply in stopping activities. Because even if you can sit down with me today and say, you know, I am doing all this. When Sandy and I had younger children, we were running here and doing that. It was gymnastics one night. It was Cub Scouts one night. It was, Parks and Rec, flag football. It was softball. It was baseball. It was things like that. Sandy taught school, and those of you who know who the elementary school teachers, you know what they do when they come home. They're grading papers all evening. At one time I was a manager of a textile industry that ran 24/7. When I left that and became your youth minister here back in 2000, there was so much to do. We were running all the time. But the rest that Jesus gives us is not just stopping some activities, because you can stop doing a lot of things and you still won't feel rested if you hadn't came to Jesus. If you hadn't come to him. It's found in actively seeking his presence, actively looking for him, knocking. What's he say? If you knock, the door will be open to you. If you seek, you will find. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Come to him, he says. So what in your life is out of control? What are you stressed over in your life? What runs rampant with you? Again, it could be religious stress like Jesus was talking to and to those people in that day. I don't think that would be application for many, but it could be. It could be just the schedule of your life, the busyness of life. You know, you're in that particular season. It could be a relationship stress that you're going through. I don't know what it is, but He knows what that stress is. I think most of the stress in our life comes because we are out of balance. When we're out of balance, life is difficult. It's difficult when we are balanced, but when we're out of balance, it is very difficult. How many of you have ever had a car that was out of alignment? The front wheels are out of alignment. Anybody ever had one like that? You're going down the road and it's constantly pulling one side or the other. You're constantly, when you're trying to text and driving with your knees, the car pulls to one side of it. I've seen you. Yeah. That's because your wheels are out of alignment. It's a balance problem. When everything is balanced properly, you're driving down the road. So when you're driving with your knees, you stay between the lines, okay? The life we have of Jesus, if we are more heavy in the world, in the activities of the world, in the things that seem like a good thing to do, and we're just so bombarded in those things, we are more in the world than we are into Jesus, then your life is going to be out of balance. There's nothing that can be done to bring that back into balance except to have more Jesus, to come to Him. and to let Him be the one who is helping you. And why wouldn't you want to come to Him? Because Jesus is the one who can restore balance and who can give you a hope. You realize because of what Jesus did for us 2,000 years ago, we have redemption. We are no longer slaves to sin. We are no longer bound for eternal damnation, an eternity apart from God. Because of Jesus and our faith and trust in Him, we have been redeemed. We have a hope. We have a glorious future. And this time of life that we're in now is a time where we need to grow. We're truly stewards of what God's blessed us with, and so this life is a time where we can show that we're going to follow Him. And we can do nothing on our own. I get that. But we can do a lot of things through Him if we come to Him. And look what He says next. Take His yoke upon you. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Now, a yoke is something that is very interesting. If you would show that picture, JD, of that yoke. I wanted to have one in here for you to see, but this picture does great. A yoke is that piece of wood or some type of thing that will bind two animals together. Generally, we would see that on oxen or maybe on horses or donkeys or mules or things of that nature. But it's used so that the load can be pulled. If we think about the strongest horse out there, probably it'd be a Clydesdale. We love to see the Clydesdales. They're impressive, beautiful creatures. They were bred to be able to pull wagons and things of that nature. And let's take, for instance, that we have a young Clydesdale that is maturing and can pull 2 tons, a plow or a sled that's got 2 tons of weight on it. And then you get one that's more mature and can pull 3 tons. You put that yoke between them, and if one can pull 2 and the other can pull 3, what do we think that team could pull? 5. Y'all did some good math, but that's not the right answer. You would think together they could pull 5, but no. They can pull 7. 7 tons. You'd think 2 tons and 3 tons, they get 5, but no, they can pull 7. There is a phenomenon called synergy. That because of 2 working together, they excel in what they can do individually. Jesus used this farming analogy for the people of that day. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Friends, again, let me tell you, we can do nothing on our own, but God doesn't tell us to do it on our own, does He? He says, I will give you power. I will be able to help you do the things I've called you to do. And when we let Jesus and the Spirit of God work through us, we can do great things. Oh, I love the passage where Jesus has got His disciples together one evening and He says, you've been talking about all these things you've seen me do, but I'm here to tell you, you will do even greater things than these. Why? Because of synergy. Because no longer will it be Jesus doing those things. It will be those apostles who are filled with Jesus and the Holy Spirit is empowering them. They are yoked with Him and they go out and they're able to multiply the things that Jesus did. Not on their own power, but because they were vessels that were being used to do the things that Jesus wants. Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Friends, the concept of God wanting His children to have burdens lifted is not just in the New Testament. This was throughout the Old Testament. The psalmist writes in Psalm 55, verse 22, cast your burden on the Lord, and He shall sustain you. He shall never permit the righteous to be moved. Man, I love that. I love those songs that we sang today. If God is for us, who can stand against us? You know, if we're on His side, nothing formed against us shall stand. He stands before us. He stands behind us. He cares for us. And in the New Testament, Peter writes this in that first letter of his, verse 6 and 7 of that 5th chapter. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon Him, for He cares for you. Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. But something about that just doesn't jive. My burden is easy. Man, I'm telling you what, when we follow Christ, I've never seen it that easy. Have you? Matter of fact, Jesus tells us in some other passages that you must deny yourself daily. Take up your cross. The cross was a terrible sign. A crucifixion was going to happen on a cross. You was going to die. He says, take up your cross daily and follow me. It doesn't sound that easy. And so when we read this, we need to understand that word easy doesn't mean effortless. We think of something being effortless, don't we? I mean, seriously. When we think about doing something that's easy, it's kind of like coming home, guys, in the afternoon, and you get that remote and you pop that recliner cable and you kick back and you sit over there and watch your wife cooking supper. And you say, man, this was easy. It might have been easy for you, but it wasn't effortless, was it? As a matter of fact, if you don't get up and help her, you're probably going to be eating sandwiches for quite a while. Easy doesn't mean effortless. It means appropriate or right. So the walk of Jesus, what we have to go through in this life is appropriate. It's right. The amount that we go through is right. Jesus' work is not a breeze, but it is just right. He will supply our every need. As we yoke ourselves to Jesus, we need to bring Him the good, the bad, and the ugly. Bring it all to Him. Lay it down at His feet and leave it with Him. Then we can have His peace. In old church, we need that peace more now than ever. And He tells us something in that passage. He says, learn from me. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. This way of discipleship is the correct way. We follow His instruction. We do the things that He did. We do the things He teaches us that we need to do. Follow Him. Paul got that. We just finished this study in Corinthians a couple of weeks ago, and Paul told us in that 11th chapter, in that first verse, he says, follow my example as I followed Christ. Be like me. Follow my example as I follow Christ. Paul was yoked together with Jesus. He could do nothing on his own, but because of Jesus pulling the load, he was walking beside of Him, learning how it was to forgive those who wronged him, to pray for those who persecuted him, to give out of a sacrificial life rather than just out of an abundance. Paul got it. And we need to as well. And as we come to Jesus and we yoke ourselves to Him, the question begs is, what can we learn? You and I. If we truly want to follow Jesus and be a part of what He's doing, what can we learn from Him as we yoke ourselves together with Him? Well, the simple answer is everything. Everything that amounts to anything. We can learn from our Lord. He's taught us so much if we dare to read it and if we dare to live it out. We can learn everything that we need. The Christian life is about a relationship, not about a bunch of rules, but about a relationship with someone who loves you deeply. The Christian life is not about recklessness, though. You know, there are some who say, well, I'm just gonna give it all to Jesus and then I'm gonna live whichever way I want to live. No, you've missed the mark. Paul was teaching the Romans about that, and he says, where sin abounds, then grace abounds even greater. Shall we keep on sinning? Absolutely not. It's not about being reckless. We can't be reckless Christians. We can't be reckless disciples or students. We need to follow Him. Again, not about keeping a bunch of laws, but doing what He does, because we're learning from Him. Jesus said He wasn't reckless. He says, you think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets? Don't think that. I've not come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come to fulfill them. So we need to follow Him. Listen to this quote. I got two quotes that I thought was powerful that I wanted to share with you today. As complicated as life may become, discipleship at heart simply means walking with Jesus in the real world and having Him teach us moment by moment how we should live life His way. I love that part. Walking with Jesus in the real world. Friends, I'm telling you, what you're going through is difficult. But in your decisions and everything that you do in your life, are you asking, what would you do, Lord? Are you leading Him, or is He leading you? Are you asking Jesus to take your yoke upon Him and learn from you? Or are you saying, I have made a mess of things. I'm not capable of leading, but I'll walk beside of you. And I'll let you take the lead. That's what He's looking for. That is living life in the real world and asking Jesus, how do I handle this problem? How do I handle this situation? And listen to this quote. Charles Stanley says this, and it's powerful. When we surrender the circumstances of our lives to Him, He lifts us up and infuses our hearts with fresh hope and wisdom. Some situations are just too difficult for us to handle, but nothing is too great for Him. He promises to refresh our weary souls when we cry out to Him. And that's exactly what the Master has said. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. If you need rest, friends, it is found only in Him. A relationship with Jesus is rest for those who are stressed. Do you have that relationship this morning, by the way? If you don't, you know it. You and the Lord know it. Do something about it. Man, there is hope for those who need hope. There is love for those who feel unloved. And don't let Satan ever whisper that you've done too much for God to love you. Don't think for a minute that you've gone too far where God's grace can't find you. No. Simply stop running. Turn to Him. Seek Him, and you'll find Him. I'm going to leave you with one last passage of Scripture. I use this quite often at funerals because it brings hope to those who are discouraged. It's from the great prophet Isaiah in that 40th chapter. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the Creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might, He increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall utterly fall. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Friends, that promise is for you today. So all of you who are weary and beat down by the world, will you take his yoke upon you today? Will you learn from him? And will you follow him? He died for you. Will you live for him? I wish that you would. Maybe this morning, as we stand and sing this song of invitation, there's a burden on your heart to go to Calvary and lay that burden down. Maybe it's not a first-time decision for you. Maybe it's just a rededication. Maybe you just realize how far you have strayed away and you need to just symbolically come and lay that burden down. Well, we're here for you. We'd love to pray with you. Maybe you haven't made that first-time decision and you need to seek him. He's here today. And oh, how he wants to be found. Whatever you need, he will supply. So open up your hearts to him. Let's stand and sing together.